For someone who struggles with standing, the fundamental appeal of scuba diving makes perfect sense. You spend the dive entirely horizontal in a weightless environment. Because of that appeal, receiving a diagnosis of postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, can feel like an instant disqualification from the sport. POTS directly disrupts the autonomic nervous system. Specifically, it impairs your body's ability to control heart rate, regulate circulation, and manage internal temperature. That specific triad of disruptions creates severe complications underwater. Heart rate, circulation, and temperature regulation are the exact biological systems you rely on to survive when submerged and breathing compressed air. A POTS diagnosis is not an automatic contraindication to diving, but it demands an individualized assessment. Because heart rate instability or fainting underwater can be fatal, the safety requirements for these divers are significantly higher than for the general population. Safely diving with POTS means shifting all of your risk management away from the dive itself and placing it entirely on surface preparation and logistics. The first step in determining your diving viability is acknowledging that POTS is not a uniform condition. Symptoms vary wildly from person to person. This horizontal diagnostic spectrum maps these variations. The left side highlights a baseline of well-controlled symptoms: stable heart rates, good exercise tolerance, and no syncope. Contrast that with the severe right side, defined by poor symptom control, debilitating dizziness, and frequent fainting episodes. We need to outline the specific physiological hurdles and exact criteria that separate a safe candidate from a high-risk candidate across this entire spectrum. Safe diving depends on an objective understanding of where you sit on the spectrum before you ever put on a wetsuit. Looking at this pre, during, and post-dive risk matrix, notice the most dangerous moments for a POTS diver occur entirely on the surface. During the prep and entry phases, you are standing upright on a hot boat deck, carrying heavy equipment. That specific physical input causes blood to pool rapidly in your legs. It triggers excessive tachycardia, or rapid heartbeat, and creates an immediate risk for a fainting episode right on the deck. The matrix highlights another red sound during the exit phase. Climbing a boat ladder forces a sudden gravitational shock on your circulatory system as you transition from weightlessness back to bearing full weight. Mitigating these risks require non-negotiable trade-offs. You have to swallow your pride and ask the crew for physical assistance. You must enter the water promptly and put on your heaviest gear entirely in the water. The traditional social aspects of lingering on a dive deck fully kitted up simply have to be sacrificed to preserve your cardiovascular stability. Once you actually enter the water, the exertion requirements change. Moving your body through dense water requires far more energy than moving through air. You have to account for unexpected physical inputs. You might need to swim against a sudden ocean current, walk across a beach in heavy fins, or in a true emergency, tow an unconscious buddy to the boat. In response to that level of exertion, a person with POTS can rapidly experience profound breathlessness, extreme fatigue, and severe heart rate spikes. The required trade-off here is strict boundary setting. POTS divers must limit themselves to easy, relaxed dive profiles. Strenuous shore entries and high-current drift dives are off the table. There is a secondary trade-off. You must dive with a highly informed, highly capable buddy who can handle any underwater emergency entirely independently. Functioning well during daily activities on land does not translate to diving readiness. The amplified physical demands of the ocean require a completely different baseline of cardiovascular fitness. Diving also brings hidden dehydration multipliers. You actively lose fluid by breathing dry, compressed gas from your tank, sweating inside your exposure suit, and battling seasickness. There is also immersion diuresis. This physiological response to being submerged in water triggers a strong urge to urinate, rapidly accelerating your overall fluid loss. When you combine that dehydration with prolonged heat exposure on a dive boat, POTS symptoms are drastically aggravated the moment you surface and stand up. You must mitigate this through premeditated, aggressive hydration protocols before the dive, and by avoiding thick, heavy thermal suits that trap heat. Then we have to look at daily medications. Common POTS treatments like beta blockers or fludrocortisone actively alter your blood pressure and manage fluid balance. These medications behave differently under atmospheric pressure and intense physical exertion. Your regimen must be completely stable long before diving is even considered. Managing environmental stressors and ensuring medication stability are prerequisites that must be met before you ever leave the dock. The weightless underwater environment is favorable to POTS patients, but the surrounding logistics and temperature extremes act as a strict gatekeeper. We can map out criteria using this go-no-go decision scorecard. An ideal candidate has no fainting history, is symptom-free during exercise, possesses strong fitness, and takes stable medications. Pivoting to the high-risk profile, this includes anyone dealing with recurrent syncope, severe autonomic dysfunction, or daily exercise limitations. The reality is stark. A syncopal episode, fainting, underwater, is a catastrophic and highly fatal event. The determining factor is whether your symptom management is robust enough to survive the extremes of the dive environment without risking sudden incapacitation. Regardless of where you fall on that scorecard, getting medical clearance from a specialized diving physician is non-negotiable. Take the physiological triggers and logistical trade-offs we've outlined here and use them as the exact framework for your doctor consultation. A diving medical officer will specifically look to exclude any structural heart disease and thoroughly review your exercise testing findings. A POTS diagnosis forces a diver to swap assumed safety for highly managed risk. The discipline of your preparation is just as vital as the dive itself.